Hello everyone. We're filming tonight from the Slate Heritage Center, which is located at 30 North 1st Street in lovely Bangor, Pennsylvania. Our presentation today is going to center on three different things. First, our most recent publication, which is the history of the slate belt textile industry. And then we are going to give you a sneak peek at the beautiful exhibit, which is all textile industry, that I will take you on a little sneak peek tour. And then finally, we have transformed the textile room into a blouse mill. So we'll take you in there also. So first, I am speaking on behalf of my fellow co-authors, Karen Brewer, Dan Koresia, Freddie DeRay, and Tom Starner. We were together for 3 years working on this book. Everybody worked really, really hard and should be proud of themselves. I also speak for the Heritage Center board members who work so hard all year. They work to put this exhibit together, and they worked so hard all year just to keep this 9-room museum as beautiful as it is. We do everything here by volunteer. So let's discuss the book. Danny Koresia, he came to me 3 years ago and wanted to write a book on the textile industry because, as he put it, it touched every aspect of his life. And as we thought about it, the textile industry touched every aspect of everybody's life in the slate belt. As you know, you pretty much worked in two places. You either worked in the quarries or you worked in the textile industry. Nobody here in the slate belt during those days was unemployed. You could work anytime you wanted to. We decided that the process was going to be as comprehensive as we could possibly get it. So we went back to 1900 with our research of the textile mills. We also expanded to the entire slate belt. That means we went to Portland and Mount Bethel, all the way down to Martins Creek, all the way over to Wind Gap, Plainfield Township, Roseto, Bangor, Penargil, you name it, Ackermanville, Flicksville. We covered it all. We didn't have to, but we wanted to make it as difficult as we could for ourselves because although we were frustrated a lot because it was so hard to find all of the mills, it turned out to be the best thing we could have done because the book is excellent. The foreword of the book was written by the famous author from our area, Adriana Trujani, whose grandparents owned Yolanda Manufacturing in Martins Creek. Now, she used to hang out there when she was a little kid, and in her foreword of the book, she pretty much sums up what we all felt about the textile industry. I quote, "The steady income from a secure job as a machine operator meant security and dream fulfillment. College for a son or a daughter, a new car, a mortgage, and a week of rest on a Jersey shore during the annual union vacation week. It was an American model in idea and execution. A machinist and a forelady could rise to the heights of their own dreams and go into business for themselves, putting the name of their choice on the door and the profits in their pockets. End of quote. Thanks, Adrian. The first section of the book chronicles the rise and fall of the industry. The Slate Belt was a perfect location for New York City manufacturers to come out Route 46, yes, before Route 80. Come out Route 46, and you were in the Slate Belt in 2 hours. These New York City manufacturers figured out that the workforce here in the Slate Belt was excellent. These people were going to work, and certainly work they did. The very first mill was in 1903. Simon Leibowitz came to Rosetto and opened up a mill, Leibowitz and Sons. The people of Rosetto came out in droves and manned all the machines, or should I say femaled all the machines. The business of textiles never stopped from that point on. Slowly the business rose and touched every aspect of our lives here in the Slate Belt. Fathers and mothers worked, and they boasted, in this little Slate Belt area here, they boasted one of the highest per capita incomes in the whole state of Pennsylvania. Because, as I said before, there was no unemployment, and both mom and dad worked. 156 separate locations were in the Slate Belt. And in those 156 locations, 376 separately owned mills were at those locations. I will show you more when we go on our little tour. Sadly, foreign imports, union wages and benefits, and NAFTA pretty much killed the industry. The second part of the book, the first part of the book was written by Karen Brewer. And the second part of the book was written by Dan Koresha. Now, he refers to it as a personal essay. And if you buy the book and you read it, you can feel it. You can feel his personal touch. Because his family eventually owned the Rosetto Box Company. So he lived it. He says, a densely woven fabric of a people and their industry. Higher education was not a predicate of financial prosperity. The driving force was hard work. Although most of the industry has vanished, the values and ethics will never disappear. And I can tell you firsthand, because my parents were in his section of the book. They were immigrants who escaped the Holocaust and came to this country. And they were sent right here to the Slate Belt, of all places, from Vienna, Austria, to Bangor, Pennsylvania, if you can imagine. And they came here because of work. They worked in the garment industry in Vienna, and they came here and worked in the garment industry in Bangor. And my family wasn't the only family that did that. Danny's family did it. He has a section in here about just the letter C. And the letter C had so many different capizolas. You name a C name, and they probably owned the mill. And that went from A to Z. So the ethics and the values, because we saw our parents work so hard. To this day, I don't understand how my mom and dad made enough money to send my brother to Penn State and to send me to a state teacher's college. How in the world would they do that? But they did. In the third section of the book is a map section. Every municipality in the Slate Belt had a mill in it. And we chronicled all 376 of them. So you can find them in the book. If you're a relative, your father, mother, grandfather, grandmother, aunt, uncle, cousin, you name it. If they work somewhere, it'll be in here. The final section was a tribute to women and a tribute to pioneers. The blouse mill industry would never have survived in the Slate Belt without the females who participated in it. They sewed so fast you couldn't follow them. They turned ears and cuffs so fast you couldn't follow them. I worked in a mill, as most of us did. And I was yelled at by many of those ladies because I was not filling their bins up fast enough, because they worked. And the conditions weren't real wonderful. It was hot. Benefits weren't great. But they had a job to do, and they were proud of it. So we honored the ladies who worked in those mills. We also honored pioneers. Guys like Blaine Smith. Now, Blaine Smith was an engineer for Scotty's, and he invented hundreds of innovations to make the efficiency of a blouse mill better. Just a small example. If you had a female sewer who was 5'10", and you had a female sewer next to her who was 5 feet tall, they would sit in the same chair. Their sewing machine would be the same level. Somebody'd get a backache. And Blaine Smith invented things like seats and tables that would fit these people and their different sizes. That's just one small example. Guys like Buck Farley, who invented material that was used by NASA for their spacesuits. And there were many more, and they're listed. I'd like to thank our sole sponsor, Gaffney Parsons Family Funeral Homes. They sponsored the Homefront book for us, and they helped us out and sponsored this book also. So much thanks to them, and many thanks to all of the people who helped us and donated textile information, were interviewed, people who gave us sewing machines and tools and fabric, you name it. Everything here is donated. We don't buy anything. So let me take you on a little sneak peek tour. My cameraman, Dan Trinati, who is the president of ER Technologies, and if you ever need any computer work, contact them. They're great. Dan is my photographer, and they handle all of the technology here at the Slate Belt Heritage Center. So I told Dan I don't want any close-up pictures of any of these cases, because I want you, the visitor, to come here, and I want you to see them. So I'll just tell you what's here. So the exhibit is referred to, entitled The Enduring Thread. And we got that name because the textile industry was like a thread that went through every part of the Slate Belt and our society. So a nice picture, an old picture of the Leibowitz factory with all of the lady workers who were in the factory dressed in their traditional Italian dresses and tops. This is the early silk business, how we get silk and turn it into thread. We have some early mills. Great old vintage pictures. Maybe you can find your relative in one of them. One of the earliest businesses here in the textile industry was the nylon business. They made stockings, and lots of them. And some of the things you'll learn here is what was a looper and what was a topper. I'm not telling you, but you can comment on the Facebook page if you know what a looper and a topper is. And don't use Google either. Up here we have some miscellaneous items, like some of the finished products of stockings and some of the tools that the weavers used. This is a beautiful Bob Doney picture. Now, Bob Doney in the early 1960s was commissioned by the First National Bank of Bangor to make 4 paintings that depicted the Slate Belt. He made 2 of the textile industry, and the other 2 we have downstairs. He made one of a slater, and he made one of a farmer. So these were beautiful pictures that hung at the First National Bank of Bangor when it closed a year or so ago. These were donated to us, thanks to the tellers at that bank who saved these pictures for the Slate Belt, or they'd be in a warehouse somewhere. As you go around chronologically, here you have the 2 factories that made the material. Collins and Aikman and Blue Ridge. And they go further back than that to Buffalo Knitting Mills and Sterling and Kaiser and all of those large mills that were different from the blouse mills. They made the fabric. And many of you worked in those places also. We have the unions. Now, this is the ILGWU. This was the workers' union. So we have a lot of artifacts in here. Come with me. And back here is the Atlantic Apparel Association. And this was an organization that handled all the owners, all the business owners. We have various mills. I told you 376. We couldn't put them all on here, but we do have many. Now, this is Textile Mills of the Slate Belt. This is an 11 map panel. And when you come down here, what you do is you take these cards. This is a list of all the blouse mills in Penargil. And if you want to find where your relative worked, you match the code. You match the code with the code on this map. And it'll show you exactly where that mill was located. There's 156 of them on here because many of these were owned multiple times from 1900 all the way up to the present day. For example, in Penargil, this PA6, that's Penargil Code 6, that's on Lobb Avenue. That was the very first mill in Penargil, owned by the Needler brothers. That had several owners in it. And in Bangor, right down at the bottom of Pennsylvania Avenue and 1st Street, B14, that had 17 different mill owners in it through the years. And as I said, East Bangor, Washington Township, Wind Gap, Martins Creek, Portland, Mount Bethel, Stone Church, Rosetto, West Bangor, you name it. They all had mills somewhere. This case has a lot of finished products. For example, Majestic Sportswear, which had the sole contract for all Major League Baseball uniforms. Valerie Fashions, Windjammer, were pretty famous around the world. And again, lots of pictures. And this is our final case. We always do this. This case shows the work of the co-authors on the book. And it shows you from start to finish all of the scrap paper that we use and the handmade maps that eventually turned into that 11th panel map. You can see by this one here all the corrections that we were constantly making. But it turned out great. And now we'll go into the little sneak peek of the blouse mill. And the first thing you do, of course, when you get there in the morning, is you punch in. Still works. It's a beautiful clock. Danny Koresha got this for us from Keystone Fashions, 1950 to 1962. Still works. So this is our, if you remember the textile room, you see that nothing in the textile room is here except one machine. So we wanted to do this in stages. So the very first thing that happened was you had to have an order. You had to have a manufacturer from New York City give you an order. Then when you got that order, they would supply the material, and then, and this is all spelled out for you, this is the cutting room, where a spreader would spread material, you'd have a lay of material, a pattern maker would figure out how many shirt sleeves you could get without wasting too much of the material. Then the cutter would cut the parts out. There were all different kinds of machines like these two. Let's see if anybody knows what that is. And this is a good one. What is that? So then this was a splitting table where people would split all the parts and make sure all the shades were correct. And then they'd put a ticket on the bundle. And then those bundles would go to the lady sewers. And this is the entire sewing department. These are folders. And then you have little feet. You have drawers filled with all different kind of needles and bobbins and things, as you'll see. These are marrow machines. You'll find out what a marrow is. This little contraption is called a puller. And it was placed behind the sewing machine, and it pulled the material through so it wouldn't wrinkle. These are some strange machines if you were not commonly in a blouse mill. This put buttons on the garment. Here's another machine that you should tell me you know what it is. It's an odd looking one. And then after it got through the sewing department and the finishing department, then they would press it, or they advanced to large pressing machines. They would put them in boxes and transport them. And then they started putting it on hangers, which kind of put the box companies out of business. Once they put it on hangers, this is a bagging machine. Then once they were all bagged, most of the trucking was done by Silverline. They shipped most of them, but Interstate did a lot, and other ones, and they used to custom make the cab so they could carry as many blouses as they could. So come on down. You want to Saturday and Sunday between noon and 3. That's when we're open. And please make a reservation because of COVID. We can't have too many people in here at one time. But if you can, we'll handle it. Make sure you wear a mask. And I'll leave you with this statement by Freddie DeRay, because Freddie, who knows more about the business than anybody I ever met, he worked with us. He was great. What a memory. Freddie said that quarries in Slate business employed men. The textile industry employed families. Thanks for listening.